Today we sit down with a very interesting entrepreneur, Calvin Correli. He is the CEO and founder of Simplero. Have you ever felt like the universe just doesn't seem to be helping you at this moment? Whatever you seem to be doing, it just seems to be a hassle. It just seems to be a push. Everything seems to be difficult. Well, Calvin's going to discuss his holistic approach to business and how to get the universe in alignment with your goals and how to marry the spiritual side of you with the business side.
Welcome to this edition of Peak Performance Podcast with your host, Thor Conklin. Thor will be sharing the necessary tools, strategies, and psychology you'll need to become a peak performer in any area of your life or business.
Thor Conklin here. We give you the tricks, the tips, the tools, the strategy, the technology, and the psychology peak performers use in order to get more done and execute at the highest level. If you know what to do but struggle with getting it all done, or simply want to raise your game to the next level, this podcast is for you. Sit back and enjoy. Calvin Correli is an entrepreneur and the CEO of a holistically focused multi-million-dollar software company called Simplero. Simplero is an all-in-one tool for entrepreneurs who want to change lives and make a living by selling their courses and content online. It does everything you need, from email marketing, automation, billing, landing pages, to delivering the content to the right people at the right time. Calvin, thank you so much for joining us today. You've got to start us off with holistically focused software company. I don't think I've ever heard of one. So bring us up to speed on that. What do you mean by that?
Yeah, I mean, what I mean is when I created this company, I was really looking to how can I raise consciousness on the planet? How can I help other people through this kind of transformation of consciousness that I had been going through myself? And so initially I was doing kind of one-on-one work with people, and I realized, you know what, I can make software. I can make a platform that makes it possible for other people to do this kind of work. And I can have more leverage that way. Does that make any sense?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. The other thing I realized was that I had this as a kind of an intuitive insight. It wasn't until later that I read Steve Jobs talked about how he was trying to infuse his products with a spirit of enlightenment about them. And he felt like that would kind of seep into the consciousness of people, and just being around these beautifully designed products that had this spirit of enlightenment about them in some way would transform people in subtle and not so subtle ways that they might not even perceive of. And so I like to think of myself creating products in that way.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because so many of the entrepreneurs that I work with struggle with their spirituality. They're very spiritual people at their core, but it's almost like entrepreneurship is on one side and their spirituality is on the other side. And you've really tried to marry the two. So how do you advise an entrepreneur that is struggling in this area?
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly it, right? That was what I realized that I was doing with my life, and I saw that so many other people were doing that. And that was my awakening moment to realize I really need to integrate those. If I really believe in the spirituality, in the power of manifesting and the power of, kind of flowing with life instead of trying to control and direct life and all these things, then that should apply to business as well. And so, so it was basically just like doubling down on that and saying, well, I believe that this is true, and this is the best way to approach it. And I'm going to try it out and see if it works. And every time I meet that fear state, I mean, that's what it is, right? We get scared that, oh, it's not going to carry the day. We're going to be, in trouble somehow if we don't go back into the old patterns of trying to control things and controlling excessive manner. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to just trust that it works out if I really step up here. And it has.
And how would you suggest for an entrepreneur, if you were coaching them, how to marry the two together?
I think it comes down to trusting that the universe is really trying to support you. So whenever it looks like it's not, you choose to believe that it's for you. So what that means specifically is something like, if doing the work feels exhausting to you, stop. Like we were going through something with getting a visa for my partner Nick, and my part of the puzzle was that I needed to conduct job interviews. We had to prove that we couldn't find anyone in the U.S. with the same qualifications, which we couldn't. But in order to do that, I had to conduct the job interviews, and I hate doing job interviews. So I was kind of postponing it a little bit, and I was like, this is not happening. I'm not doing this. There has to be another solution. And randomly, this old friend of mine reached out. He's also Danish, and he happens to live in New York. And he reached out to me, and we had lunch. And I was like, I went into having this intuition that he might be able to help in some way. And so we talked about it, and he had time right after. And we got this like meeting room, set up a meeting with Nick, talked it through like strategically. And then he had a friend who was doing recruiting for big Silicon Valley companies and knew this stuff cold. And she was more than happy to conduct the interviews for me. So that's the kind of thing where, right, I could just feel everything inside of me turn and being like, oh, I don't want to do these interviews. And the solution popped right up.
So interesting. So you're listening to your body and how you feel, not necessarily the results of just kind of grinding through it. It's like, if it just doesn't feel right, I don't feel like I'm in my flow. You step back and go, okay, is there a better way of doing this?
Yes, absolutely. And like listening to your body is so critical. When I do job interviews these days, I will like 2 minutes in, 3 minutes in, I'll be like, sorry, dude, I'm not feeling it. I'm very intuitively, like I operate very intuitively, and I'm just not feeling it with you. And so I'm not going to waste your time and my time. So let's just end it here. And people are always like, all right, I respect that.
Interesting, because I think so many times as entrepreneurs, I know I suffer from this at times. We see a wall and it's like, okay, let's go break it down. Let's run through it. We just keep knocking at it because that's, kind of our nature. But, it's interesting. I did an interview recently where the guy said, look, if I knock on the front door and nobody answers, he goes, I just build another door. I don't try to just bang on it, until I'm bloody. And
That's so interesting. And I'm like, why would you even build a door? Why not just like build this beautiful red carpet or in front of you? But hey.
I knew this interview was going to be very different from the very beginning. And I want to bring a different perspective because I think we get caught up in this where we use brute force to get through things sometimes. And it serves us well at times, but there's other ways of going about it. So I'm really interested to kind of pick your brain and see your perspective on things and the approaches that you've taken. Now, right. I was listening to one of your videos before the interview, and I knew it was going to be a very different interview when I heard this one. And it started out with, I don't like all those kind of goal things and all that stuff, all that structure. And I just kind of like to dance with the universe. Now, everything we talk about here on Peak Performers is about execution, setting your goals and all. And I'm really interested to dive into this because I know you've been a very successful entrepreneur and something's working for you. So I want to pick it apart and figure out how did you get everything done without, that traditional goal-setting process.
Right. I mean, so what I've noticed with goals, for me at least, is that I almost never end up achieving the goals that I set anyway. Not in exactly the way that I set out to achieve them, at least. And even if I do, I'm really excited for like 30 minutes or maybe a day, and then there's just the next goal. So having that thing out there as something in the future is not really motivating to me. For me, it's all about enjoying the process, enjoying the work that I do more than the results. The results are great. I'll take them any day. But not doing things for the results, really doing everything because I enjoy it. So what I do is I like to set out a vision to really feel and see and like really it's like a discovery process of feeling into what is it really that I want to manifest here? What do I want my life to look like, to feel like, to smell like? And then use that as my guide. And it's always this like some parts of the picture are going to be super clear and some parts of the picture are going to be a little fuzzy, and then you kind of discover as you go along and you're like, oh yes, you recognize it now because you've done the vision process. And that works for me, and there's no timeline on it. It's like whenever the time is right, it'll be that way. And that's the other thing I've noticed is like I'm now 42 years old and there are things that I've figured out now that I'm like, oh my God, if only I'd known this like 10 years ago or 20 years ago. But you know what? I'm really enjoying it today. The fact that I didn't know this 10 years ago is not hurting me in any way whatsoever today. So it's just like whenever it happens, it happens. And I try to operate from a place of everything is great right now. I'm just, playing with things and making them even better. It's not like I need to do this in order to prove myself or, feel worthy or be happy or whatever. I'm happy right now. And I want to do this because it's fun. We're just playing. It's just playtime.
Now, that is great advice. I tell you, I work with so many entrepreneurs that they feel like they're going to, be happy once they get their goals. Goals are not going to make you happy. Achieving them, not. Maybe for a moment, it's really about who you become. In my mind, that's the true gift. It's not what you get, it's who you become. And, it's really interesting because you and I are very similar. I thought we were kind of be at opposite ends of the spectrum, but it's interesting to hear you speak. I'm all about vision also. You've got to have that vision. And I really like what you say about, it's not about achieving that goal. It's about enjoying and being in the moment now. And when it gets there and I get the manifestation of the goal, which is driving me closer to my vision, that's all in alignment. And that's great. I don't know when it's going to come. If it's going to be a year or a month or 2 years. It's about what am I doing now? And am I working towards that vision? So beautiful. Well done. We're right in alignment.
All right.
Hey, let's talk a little bit about the software company, Simplero. Amazing platform. And I'm not going to make this into a commercial about your software product, but I really like what you're doing there. And I want to first start with, how did you come up with it? Why did you do it? And what were some of the challenges in setting up that company?
I came up with it in 2008. I was going through in February 2008. What happened was that with my first wife, we just bought this house that ended up being way more expensive than we thought it was going to be, and this renovation project that ended up being way more expensive. We just had our second child, so my son, and it was completely disastrous. The house wasn't ready, so we moved in with my dad and stayed there for a month, which was very challenging. And then I was sitting in that house alone because they went away to some warm place, and I was like, everything was breaking down around me, and the projects that I were pursuing, I was making a living from doing freelance programming at the time, and everything just fell through. And I was like, oh God, what is the universe trying to tell me here? And that's when I sat down and I was like, all right, let me find out what I'm about, what I'm here to do. What do I truly want? It was a question I'd never dared to ask myself. And that was the moment that I realized I'm here to really fully integrate the spiritual side with the entrepreneurial side, or like the practical earthly side of money and programming and all those things. And that's been my guiding star ever since. And really that led me to being like, this is so important. I need to teach this to other people. How do I teach things? How do I even sell a workshop? And that led me to discover online courses. And I that's how I got into Simplero. I built it literally to sell my own online courses. And then, thankfully that was a rising industry. And so it's just been like carrying me up with it basically. And so I think one of the keys is for me, I do Simplero. Of course, I appreciate making money from it, but I'm not doing it primarily for the money or for any kind of business goals or we need to reach this growth or whatever. I'm really doing it to support people in that transformational work that they're doing, and to support me in my transformational work, right? So that's kind of the leading. We don't have an exit strategy. We don't have any other constituents to serve other than, is this serving the growth of all? Which actually brings me back to this idea of like, what does love want here? What does life want? For me, it's like, it's easy to get into conflicts of like, well, I want this and you want that. But even in any kind of relationship, I believe that there is something that life wants or that love wants here that would be the most loving outcome, irregardless of your ego and my ego. And that's the solution that I'm always trying to find in everything. And that's what I'm trying to do with Simplero as well.
Well, I think any time where you can make the system of bringing online courses and online educational programs and put a structure around it that's simple, I mean, I think that's love right there, because as entrepreneurs, we absolutely hate the process of going through to try to figure out how to, it's almost like we have to become programmers to get our information out. And I love the fact that you said, look, I built this thing because I wanted to get my stuff out. And then as I'm using it, I'm like, you know what? It'd be really good if I had this function here. And you add that. I think that's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's how so much of it came about, is exactly like that.
Great system from what I can see.
People tell us like they with other things they need to, like a WordPress site and some plugins or whatever, and then they end up being system administrators or programmers and trying to tear their hair out when it breaks down and all these things. And so that's one of the stories that we consistently hear.
For the last 16 years, I've been driven by the question of why some people achieve amazing results and others don't. The answer? 90% of their success came from their psychology. So if 90% of their success comes down to their psychology, what was the one thing that enabled them to produce the results that others were not? Their ability to execute, their ability to get things done. Now, we all know how to get things done, but some of us do it better than others. And some of us are not even coming close to tapping our potential. So if you're truly committed to tapping your potential and really becoming a peak performer and getting the results that you need, want, and desire, take your phone and text the word BESUMMIT. That stands for Business Execution Summit. One word, BESUMMIT, and text that to 41411. I'm going to send out some additional information on our upcoming event that will truly teach you the science of execution. Thank you so much for listening today. I really do appreciate your time, and I hope you found today's show valuable. If you would like to receive these shows automatically to your phone or to your computer, simply go to iTunes and subscribe. After listening to several of the shows, if you're so inclined, please leave us a 5-star rating, as this helps us reach additional people and spread the message. If you're truly committed to taking your life to the next level and doing whatever it takes to become a peak performer, but something's holding you back, something is blocking your way, and you just can't seem to figure out what it is, send me an email to info@thorconklin.com, and I'd be more than happy to get on the phone with you. We'll schedule a 15-minute discovery call. No obligation, no cost. I absolutely love to hear from the listeners, and if there's something I can do to help, I'd be more than happy to do that. Also, if you found something of great interest in today's show and you want to share that with your friends and family, simply go to my Facebook page, Thor Conklin. Click on the episode, hit the share button, and share it on your page. You can follow me at Twitter at Thor Conklin. The website is thorconklin.com. We're constantly adding new free resources, discussing additional tricks, tips, tools, and strategies on how to be a peak performer. Remember, I try to keep these episodes short so you can listen to them during dot time, doing other things, commuting, driving, walking, working out. Decide to be a peak performer in all that you do. And until tomorrow, have an absolutely amazing day. That concludes part 1 of our interview with Calvin Correli. Please stay tuned later this week for part 2.